So before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. The webinar portion of this event is being recorded, as you will have just received notice, and it will be shared with you and posted with our other past conversations on our website and on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to disable your video if you don't want to be recorded on camera. We do not, however, record or publish our conversations during our Reflecting Together time, which will begin at 1 p.m. And questions and conversation are welcome and encouraged at the end of the formal presentation, but please feel free to use the chat function if that works for you throughout the conversation so you don't lose your thought. And the live transcription or the closed captioning has been enabled, so you can turn it on or off individually using those 3 dots or the more button in your Zoom browser or app. And following this conversation, you're invited to join the Reflecting Together, which is an opportunity for trainees, collaborative partners, and community members to come together and share your reflections and thoughts on this topic. And this will take place from 1 to 1:30 in the same Zoom space, and it's facilitated by Tina, who's one of the collaborative older adult partners. And for those of you who are new or newer to the collaborative, I just have one quick slide about us. So we at the McMaster Collaborative for Health and Aging are a coalition of researchers, trainees, older adults, and caregivers working together to improve the health and well-being of older Canadians by advancing patient-oriented research on aging. And we aim to achieve this by providing research and engagement consultations and support, by promoting training and mentorship, and facilitating partnerships and knowledge translation, for example, with activities like today, for patient-oriented research on aging. So if you're new to the collaborative, we welcome you to reach out or connect to us through email, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And we encourage you to visit our website where you can find more information, including a number of new resources and details for our current engagement fund opportunity. So before we turn it over to Brenda and her partners, I'd like to invite Alison Dubé from Mira to say a few words as today's event partner.
Thank you so much, Sue, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here representing the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging today, who was very excited to provide funding to support Brenda's great work on this project that we've been happy to collaborate on. At the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging, we aim to facilitate a collaborative and interdisciplinary approach to research that incorporates end users from inception until creation. And part of our goal is also to build capacity in aging research through professional development and educational programming for our trainees. And so we were certainly happy to collaborate with Brenda on this project, which aims to fulfill all of our missions from design thinking, collaboration, interdisciplinary planning, and trainee capacity building. I look forward to hearing from Brenda about her excellent project, and I'll turn it over to her.
Well, thank you, everybody. And now I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me for a moment. And I'm going to ask, because I can't see anybody anymore, I'm going to ask for a verbal, can you see my screen? Does it look like it should, Sue?
Looks good.
Thank you, Allison. So thank you so much for this kind introduction, and nothing actually speaks to me more in my soul than the McMaster Collaborative, and it's just an absolute privilege and pleasure to co-lead this with Dr. Rebecca Ganan, who's on the line here. I'm so grateful to Rebecca for her ongoing leadership, and I'm learning so much from her about community partnerships in research and health with older adults, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Maureen Markle-Reed, who many of you know recently retired and created a vacancy, which I readily jumped in with 2 feet. So it really has opened up different areas of learning and professional growth for me. So I'm here to introduce you to the I Am Human conversation exchange. And what I want to open with is I just want to acknowledge the funding and support from the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging. And I'll talk about in the smaller print there about the role of our major funding body in Canada, the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, which as part of the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, there's an institute focused on aging, and I have Institute of Aging twice because it's that important. Boy, I just noticed that I made a mistake. So all of that to say they do fund health research focused on the aging population in Canada. I'm also very grateful to the McPherson Institute for Leadership, Innovation, and Excellence in Learning, which I was able to also get some funding given that we're focused on creating a teaching and learning platform. So this quote really encompasses it all in terms of, and yeah, we're going slow and we're going together. So I want to say thank you beyond the funding to everybody on the line, to the MIRA staff, Alison Dubé, and Audrey Paddocks, Alison Utram, who are just simply outstanding colleagues and individuals. Dr. Joy Vrkljan, I know maybe on the line, she may be our furthest participant. She might win the prize, but she's taken her skills to Ireland. Isn't that exciting? A postdoctoral fellow and researcher. And the amazing Esther Liu, who's on the line. She's an undergraduate student who's been really the catalyst to help move this project forward. And she's a research assistant and in her third year of the Bachelor of Health Science program. And we have community partners on the line. Sheila, and I hope Tom is here, or both Toms are here, and others as well. We have Didi, Yanke, Steph, I think I saw Sharon come on, who are some of our awesome trainees that comprise the training council. So it really is about moving slow and moving together, because you can see that good ideas really take time. And I'll talk about the formulation, because that's what this is about in many ways, the creation of a platform. I have put here, and I've had the pleasure of being involved with our collaborative partners, and Tina is one of the partners on our collaborative advisory committee, and just the generosity, the spirit, and I'm going to use the word collaboration again. I can't overuse that word, but together we have formulated some approaches in terms of how we work together, and I think again this embodies the approach. We did adapt some of these guidelines as a starting point from Dr. Rigal Shaba, who was our former associate vice president, who's now at the University of British Columbia, but nonetheless, and sort of shape these, and with her permission, of course, but it's a good reminder always when we're engaged in dialogues to think about these principles. And I often am looking at these whenever I have the pleasure and privilege of chairing a meeting or being involved in a meeting. So I do want to open with, I'm an occupational therapist by training, and I think it's important to acknowledge my perspective, perhaps my lens, the way I view the world, and so when we talk about occupation within occupational therapy, we talk about all the occupations that all the things and activities that occupy a person's time, and occupations often associated with holding a job, but we know that it can depend on culture, what's important to people. It can depend on, which country and world we're a part of, how we grow up in terms of what's important to us, and all that to say that we do partner with individuals to determine and work with them to develop and be able to do the things that occupy their time. We have, as a profession, been around for just over 100 years. And emerged after World War II, or World War I, I'm sorry, obviously, World War I, with returning soldiers and reintegration into society. Unfortunately, many occupational therapists still work in that particular field. I wish they didn't, but there is still conflict around the world, as we know. So my area of research is on driving and returning to driving. And in fact, when we think about driving and medical conditions that can impact our ability to be behind the wheel, in fact, you won't see a more stigmatized group in many ways than the older driver. And I raise that here because it does inform thinking about how our attitudes, our beliefs, the design of spaces and places really form an underlying systemic bias. And And even yesterday, I was talking to my colleague that we're working on a research project out of Baycrest. He's chief of staff, a geriatrician, Dr. Gary Nagley, and another colleague, Dr. Saye Bayet from the University of Calgary. And we were talking about ageism, in fact, in our particular area of research, and just how the policies are tough when in fact we know that most older drivers are safe drivers. So we need to work together on many different areas. And so underlying the IAM platform is the notion of ageism, and I'll get to that in a moment. So it's not just driving, right? It's the images we see every day. And in Australia, they're making a huge push, in fact. And I saw this image on Twitter where they said, you know, when we show older people's hands, we're often conveying vulnerability and decline. And this gentleman wanted to showcase actually older hands in action, so to speak. And that certainly speaks to me as an occupational therapist as well, in terms of what we're doing every day. And so we really need to make the unconscious sort of conscious in many ways, but do that meaningfully, thoughtfully, and with impact. So, I mean, we could probably replace Australia with Canada, but this is still a major issue in terms of ageism. And I just wanted to highlight here within the Ontario Human Rights Commission, it is recognized as a socially constructed way of thinking. So ageism isn't just about physical barriers, it's also attitudes and stereotypes that can actually impede our health and impede the way we move around in the world and the way we perceive ourselves. Again, structuring society based on an assumption that everyone is young without recognizing and sort of celebrating the range of abilities. So ageism is pervasive, it's seemingly innocuous, but it's extremely damaging, including to our own health. And I'm going to talk about that in a few slides. Lots to talk about in a few slides, but it should have our attention. And there has been a global report on ageism. There are books coming out, and I'll be sure to share these resources with Alison Finney, who's helped to organize this presentation, and so there's books. And then on the line, I just noticed two of our colleagues are here who wrote about the notion of ageism in technology, that and we'll be able to share the link, and they'd be able to speak to this more than I can in terms of the way they conveyed it, but speaking about just how our world is designed by those without much consultation, and that includes the new and emerging technologies. And they caught our attention by talking about that great series with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, which and so yeah, it got the attention of CBC, right, Nicole and Stephanie. So so I think, you know, anytime we can raise this issue and raise the conversation, it's important. So today's agenda, we have a little bit of a learning road trip. I'm going to walk you through what the IAM platform is about, and talking about idea development. And that's what I appreciate about the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging, who supported this idea. But where do ideas come from? And then how do you move an idea to reality and turn that into an actual platform? And then talk about some of the next steps for the platform itself. So you might say, well, let's create an intergenerational teaching and learning platform, which brings younger and older adults together who might not get a chance to interact otherwise. Well, I wish it was that simple, but we need to step back oftentimes to move forward in terms of idea development. And I'm really glad Alison raised design thinking, and I don't have enough time to go through that process here. You can Google it, for lack of a better, I hope you have better search strategies than that, but Googling certainly pays off in terms of getting some basics and some background. So I appreciated this particular graphic because you can get caught in, I'm going to call it an endless loop, but I do think that there's pathways out of that, which may be called failure in some ways, and perhaps the IAM platform is headed in that particular pathway, but we're doing our best here. We need to define the problem. We have to step back before we start to prototype. And so I'm going to talk through some steps about where the idea for this particular approach came from. So in fact, as many of you may know, there's a new McMaster student residence that is meant to be built on campus. It's close to Forsyth Avenue. You may have seen that there were homes there. I am not responsible for the design. Let me just say that, but it's next to Dalewood Collegiate on Main Street. But what that kind of opportunity provided is that we can start to involve others, ask people, and there was discussion about creating a space within that MAC student residence for intergenerational space for older adults, community members, and others to come together. And in fact, was part of the proposal. So before the pandemic, dare I say that, we ran focus groups with community dwelling older Hamiltonians. We surveyed McMaster students to ask them about their experiences with intergenerational connectivity, as well as their thoughts and experiences in interactions with the, let's say, the other end of the respective age spectrum. We then, I brought those ideas and some of the emerging findings to my occupational therapy Master of Science students, and together with a panel of older adults, the students developed some concepts, and so you can see just below that, in fact, one of the groups even, sort of was able to get an artist to imagineer what a space might look like, and there were lots of pictures. Sometimes are very, very helpful. But even amongst the group, the notion of a conversation cafe was put forward. Being the researcher, perhaps that I am, of course, we turned this into an article and talked about that process, including talking about design thinking within that article and how might we create an intergenerational university hub and shape place and space. And it won an award, that article for like a best paper award at an American conference. Let me just add that. And very excited. And Dr. Evelyn DeRoche is here. I think I saw K-Jax come on the line as well, who was involved with helping to do some graphics and some survey analysis. Really appreciate it. Again, we never do these things on our own, do we? And so very grateful for the team and Dr. Evelyn DeRoche's editing techniques as well down the stretch. So global issues are local issues. So here we have, pre-pandemic, and now post-pandemic, of course, the university residence being built. Unfortunately, we do have incidents that are happening, and the Gage Park incident between LGBTQ, Two-Spirit Plus, and I will say, and others, actually really shook me to the core. And many of you might recall that incident. And in fact, it propelled me to reach out to our President's Advisory Committee for creating an inclusive campus, and resulted in some conversations with Dr. Rigal Shabbat to follow up. And then, of course, we've had ongoing tragic incidents, the incidents of George Floyd. 2020 was a tough year. Joyce Echequan, Indigenous mother of many children, who was treated extraordinarily badly, tragically by the health system within Quebec. So lots of ongoing learning. And of course, within the COVID-19 pandemic, there were issues with health equity. So concurrent with grappling with those issues, there is Mira trying, right, Dr. Allison Dubé and I having conversations, and Audrey, about how can we create opportunities to still move forward, to break down barriers. Mira hosted the CIHR. Now that you know what CIHR is, our major funding body, they host research trainees. Some of our community partners, you may be on the line, were part of that with a really innovative session where research trainees who are part of the summer program on aging shared their research, and we were able to talk about how do we interact with community partners. I then had the privilege and pleasure of putting in as lead applicant a CIHR training grant, and here comes failure. But very briefly, that CIHR grant really centered on the mining of digital data and we've seen a big push now, and I'm not going to get into what machine learning and artificial intelligence is all about. Of course, we're hearing more and more about that, but where is that data coming from? And is that data actually representative of I'm going to say everyday Canadians, everyday culture, like where is that data coming from? That's what I'm just going to close with that question. And how, as future trainees, as current researchers, we really need to be thinking about the data. And I know Dr. Nicole Dahmer, who's on the line, is doing some excellent work in terms of talking to older adults about their respective views on data, and so lots of work being done. But all that to say that application failed, but within that application, it was pushing to go beyond aging, but also this notion of intersectionality. And that's where we're thinking about the complex and cumulative way. Yes, this is the definition from Merriam-Webster's dictionary, but the complex and cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, classism, combine and overlap. And that comes from the work of Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who some of you may have seen on CNN. She's often speaking about this, but it's about aging and other things. And am I sitting here as an expert about all of these areas? Absolutely not. So I, along this way, have learned and continue to learn so much about this area. It's endless and infinite and important in terms of learning, but really, we need to, in this respect, in terms of intersectionality, thinking about aging being foregrounded in some ways, and how do we do that to understand the range in terms of who comprises our aging population when we use those types of words. So how do we move? Those are sort of the ideas. I guess I'm giving you a glimpse into my brain in some ways, but how do we move an idea to reality? And again, when you say, oh, it's in my brain, well, it's interacting and talking to lots of different people. So the push now, right, is to how do you take some ideas, and design and think about delivering doesn't have a Y in it. So always interesting when you see your slides a little bit later. But what do we mean by intersectionality? And so now I'm going to talk through what does the I am stand for, and introduce you to some of those concepts. So intersectionality, I've just introduced you to that definition from the dictionary, but also just how differences and other forms of discrimination interact with one another. And so in the I am platform aim is to create an interactive space to learn about these types of concepts, and learn about equity, diversity, and inclusion with an aging lens. Why focus on ageism? Well, we know, as I opened with the discrimination, the prejudice, and the bias, but what does that mean? And Dr. Becca Levy, who I've cited all four of her work here, she's a professor at Yale who's been studying aging for a very long time. That's resulted in that book. But effects of ageism has been linked to longevity, cardiovascular events, physical function, and in fact, our own attitudes about aging can affect how long we live. So if we have negative stereotypes about aging, actually we're apt to live 7.5 years less. And that she's shown that through some of her statistical analysis. So we want to challenge ageism, as well as other types of bias and prejudice, and really thinking about a strengths-based approach. And so what does mobility, that's the M, have to do with it? So we talk about the ability to move around our home and our community, and we can do that in all kinds of different ways. It's a key indicator of healthy aging. But we know that can be limited by physical as well as attitudinal barriers. And I would say that the I am platform certainly is skewed towards the notion of thinking about attitudes, which again are systemic. And from our attitudes come the physical barriers in terms of the way we construct society. So we really want to address those barriers and think about how we can facilitate individuals to participate in society. So as we consider the different ways of, where does the I am platform maybe sit? And I'll introduce you and talk to you about the platform. And this is a graphic that was shared with me by Dr. Natasha Johnson, who's part of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Indigenous Reconciliation Committee in the Faculty of Health Science. She's a pediatric psychiatrist. And so this notion of becoming anti-racist, and where do we sometimes sit, right, within our learning zone? And I appreciate this because I think many times we're in the fear zone a little bit. We're uncomfortable talking about it. We avoid hard questions sometimes, and it's difficult. And we rush to that growth zone in some ways. And again, I'm probably maybe speaking for myself, as I should, right? Is that I rush to wanting to make change, wanting to, be involved and change policies and procedures and make sure data and my research is inclusive. But I think we need to sit a little bit longer in the learning zone. And that's where the I Am Human platform sits, is to spend some time exploring those issues so that we can take that learning forward. So now I'm going to introduce you to the I Am platform and how it works. And right now, I feel very fortunate, as we had noted in the registration, and we have many on the line. We have 5 trainees and 10 older adult partners who are going through these respective steps. And I'll talk through what we refer to as checkpoints. So essentially, they do, and you're not surprised to see a driving analogy, perhaps. Given my area of research, but this notion of being oriented, creating a story that is shared between a short excerpt of our respective lives that's shared with the partner, and then learning some more background knowledge, having the exchange, and then reflecting on that exchange. And you're saying, well, what exchange? And I know I'm filling in the gaps as we go along in terms of the I Am puzzle, but feel very, very fortunate to have been able to, let's say, ideate and actually create tangible resources through the funding that I've had from the McMaster Institute for Research on Aging and McPherson. So essentially, there are 3 when we stop at certain checkpoints within the I Am platform. There's an opportunity to learn about different content, as well as the way we might go about having a conversation. Indigeneity, I haven't spoken to that as much, and I will say that's to be determined, but that has been, some preliminary discussions have been had, and we need to continue to explore those modules and develop those. But, and then this idea of sort of developing your own personal profile and what that might be, and reflecting on your own place, perhaps within the world in many different ways. And then at that learning by doing stage, that's where the conversation exchange happens. So we reflect, and not surprisingly, and as we move forward, is thinking through how we might take some of that information forward. So as I said, we've been able to create actual, what I like to do this, tangible resources, including an online, translating this content to an online module where there's videos and different interactive activities that support people in their learning as they go forward. So we are at the program evaluation stage. We're just waiting for final ethics approval to be able to conduct some interviews. So in some ways, they're going to be retrospective because our older adults and trainees have had an opportunity to meet and go through these steps. So here we are. I don't really like I came back to this graphic. I was thinking about these heads here, but nonetheless, they still give an idea. Yes, we all have heads, but yeah, so we move through. Now you know that we have some learning checkpoints along the way, and we enter the platform. And then what happens is there's an exchange. And we are trying to consider how to make this inclusive, accessible. And so all resources also can be provided in paper form. They could be provided as audio files if necessary, and we've tried to think about universal design for learning principles. The exchange can happen by Zoom, and we've had that. They can happen by telephone, yeah, the old humble telephone call is still, fantastic technology. So I'm very pleased to say that all 10 of our, or all 9, I have to say, of our community partners have been able to meet with our trainees, and our trainees have also been able to meet with our community partners, obviously. So this notion of reflection and feedback is on the other side of that exchange. And then it's about, and this is where some of the questions and some of the exploration and evaluation is what happens on the other side, so to speak. So I'm just going to, just before I move to showing you sort of our world premiere of Sheila, who's on the line, we're going to show her profile. Thanks, Sheila, for giving us permission to do that. So she created, together with Esther, each of our partners has created a snapshot or an abstract of who they are and what they're about. But going into that kind of exchange, we do want to think about cultural humility. And as you watch the video, perhaps this is something for us to think about. It's a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique about cultures with no defined endpoint. And there has been lots of discussion over the years and actually lots of focus on cultural competence. What's interesting about that slight change in humility or to cultural humility is the recognition that actually learning is an ongoing process, that it doesn't have, we don't reach competence, so to speak. And that's probably pervades lots of areas, not just in terms of understanding culture, but I think it's an important concept and it's a different way of thinking that I think is brings a unique strength to the platform. So again, we want to learn from each other, and everybody can read the slides. So I am going to fumble right now with a little bit with the bringing up the video. And people are going to give me a thumbs up. So I'm going to show the video, and there are captions within the video. So it may be that you want to turn off the captions, but we tested this out and it should work. So I'm hoping everybody can see the video.
We can see fine, Brenda.
Thank you.
My name is Sheila O'Reilly, a name which for me instills pride because it announces my cultural, spiritual, really, ties. I feel close to Ireland, even though my ascendants arrived in Canada in the early 1800s. My husband and I have 2 grown children who are amazing. Due to disabilities, I've never had a full-time job, but I'm active in my Guelph community. I've volunteered with St. Joseph's Health Care Centre for over 20 years in either the day program for brain injured people, the coffee shop, visiting residents on the palliative wards, and now I'm serving on the Patient and Family Advisory Council. I work in palliative care also at Hospice Guelph, Hospice Wellington, mainly cleaning the kitchen. I'm also a founding member of ABIS, Acquired Brain Injury Survivor Solutions. As a group, we advocate for just insurance treatment for victims. I spent time on many boards involving literacy, health, immigration, or the arts. All are keen interests. In 1982, a car bicycle accident put me in a coma for 7 weeks, after which I had to relearn to talk and walk. This experience, though devastating, gave me insight into what many others must confront. I saw how people treat, often unkindly, those they have to work to understand. My longing to learn about others and their languages took me to Ireland 5 times, working in the south and volunteering in the north with peace centers, Ecuador, where I worked for 3 months with the youth group, then returned to visit twice, Israel, where I worked on the kibbutz, and India to visit my husband Ajay's family. After the accident, I felt insecure about traveling alone but I felt compelled to walk the Compostela, which I did alone in 2014. I speak with functional fluency 3 languages and tiny bits of about 12 others. This study fascinates me, as I am also someone who likes to learn about and find out what motivates others. A friend once described me as a spiritual engineer, which is a label I adore.
Okay, I'm going to fumble again back to the slides for a second. Yeah, and I will say, like, thank you so much to our older adult partners, because in some ways they didn't necessarily know what they signed up for. A lot of this, and I really give all kudos to Esther Lou, who's on the line, who's been navigating these conversations and helping us to decide that. So I know we have some older adult community partners and IAM trainees on the line. And so I just wanted to open up, Sheila, you're here and I'm hoping you would be able to unmute, and I need to start my video. That's the one thing I forgot to do, was restart my video. Here I am again, but hopefully you could still hear my voice. So I'm hoping, Sheila, that you might open up with by unmuting and sharing why you decided to sign up and become involved in the IAM platform.
I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I think I expressed in there, I just find it fascinating to know about others, what motivates others, what makes them tick, I like to say. And I also find it quite concerning, and I've noticed this for a long time, how we treat our older populations. And now that I'm into, I guess, an older population, though it did surprise me when I thought I was trainee for a while, and then I thought, no, I'm one of the older people. I still find it as concerning, I guess, as I did. And I look to other cultures specifically for much more guidance on how to relate, how to bring these people into, not so much bring them into the fold, but how to regard older people who are looked at with much more, I think, of a sense of reverence.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila, and thank you so much. And yeah, no, I think we have lots of work to do, right, in terms of in sort of the Western world, I'd say, around how we view aging. I know Tom Carruthers was supposed to join us. I did see Tom on the line, but Tom Carruthers, are you there? Or Alison, can you tell me if Tom was able to join?
I'm just checking. I don't think so.
Okay, Tom Weitz, you're on the line, correct? Tom, can you hear me? If you're able to unmute, Tom?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a surprise a little bit, right? Asking you to speak, but I wondered if you could speak to why you joined the IAM platform.
Well, there were a couple of things that piqued my interest. First of all, excuse me, my voice and I are not connected today. I once described myself as omni-curious, and I think that best describes me. Anything I don't know anything about, I want to learn. And now that I've retired from work, which I did a few number of years ago, I've lost the connection with what's going on, what's upcoming. I've lost the connection with younger people. You know, I'm at Techno Twit, and yet technology is not avoidable. Here we are on technology. And it fascinates me to watch people use technology as if they were born to it, which they actually were. Whereas I still think that if I push a wrong button on a computer or a phone, it'll explode in my hands. And I've led a particularly diverse life as well. And so I thought it might be interesting to young people to learn that you can fall and fumble and bumble about for a decade or two and still make a wonderful life out of it all with just a few minor mental adjustments.
Thank you very much, Tom. And and each, I will say, each profile is unique, and that sort of speaks again to the heterogeneity of being human, and hence the I Am Human platform. So so thanks, Tom. We have some of our I Am trainees from our guiding council on the line as well, and Dee Dee, I'm hoping that you might be able to speak a little bit to your experience and joining.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think very much just the title of the platform, I Am Human, really spoke to me when I saw that. That caught my eye and really got me kind of to read further into the email that was sent out to us. But yeah, I think just overall, it really speaks to my core values and where I've kind of found myself in where I'm at with my research. And it is just this idea of recognizing that, you know, we are all human and we all have our own stories. And it's really nice to be able to have a space to share that and to learn from others and to hear about, you know, other people's challenges, but also the good things in life. Not everything is just about challenges. And I thought that was quite interesting, and wanted to be able to contribute to help move this platform forward.
Thanks, Dee Dee. I think Steph might be here as well. Steph.
Hi.
I can't see like so I feel like I'm talking at, yeah. So thanks, Steph.
No worries. I mean, kind of like Dee Dee, it's really exciting to see the initiative, be part of the initiative. As a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Health, Aging and Society, funded by MIRA, I work with Dr. Nicole Dallmer, as you mentioned, Brenda, and we really look at ageism and intergenerational relations and technology, and more specifically, how older people experience and understand data and data objects. So naturally, you know, after speaking with Brenda and I think Audrey a little bit about this lovely initiative, and despite being a scholar in the field, I was really excited to learn more and experience firsthand, you know, an initiative that's grounded in storytelling and community and research and inclusivity, both in its roots and its development. So it's been great thus far. And I'm really, really keen to see it take life. And I know, you know, the great impact that I'm certain it will make.
Thanks, Steph. And yeah, no, I'm really grateful to have the students. I'm calling them the students, but they know much more. Maybe I'm the student actually in this. So we're all learning together, aren't we, Steph? Yeah, and Young K, you were on the line, and Young K's from the Faculty of Engineering. And Young K, can you hear me? You might have to.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. So my motivation is to just to find some interesting and good questions in my research area, which is about healthcare and mobility. And I also want to avoid some potential risk when it comes to recruiting some volunteers. But I think that if a research research that target on benefits the aging population should include this kind of our volunteers. So I think it's very good to have communication with them. And as an international student, I think participate the platform can help me to improve my oral English. So thank you, Brenda. Yes, that's very interesting experience.
Yeah, thanks, Youngke. And we learned lots. So each of the trainees also made a short profile as well. And Youngke, I really, not to say, do I have favorites? No, I don't have favorites. But nonetheless, your profile intrigued me as well in terms of your background in China, how you came to Canada. And so it's good learning all around to what Tom was saying, right? Is sometimes we end up sort of in our own crowd, so to speak. And that includes, in a research, dare I use the word lab, where we're oftentimes thinking and interacting in the same area. And so sometimes pushing our boundaries can provide those opportunities. And sometimes we learn something new. Sometimes it validates what the direction that we're already going, and validation can be just as important. So we'll have an opportunity. I'm just rounding the bend here. I know Allison and Sue probably want me to close up shop here. So just give me a moment to just talk a little bit about the sustainability of the I Am Human platform. Just 2 more slides to go here. So just very briefly is really thinking through, how does something like this keep going? Yes, we had catalyst funding from the from MIRA and from the McPherson Institute, and we're very grateful for that. But how do you continue to create perhaps a cycle of I Am champions, right? So people that have taken it and then can help bring people on board in terms of recruitment. So I think that's something important, right? So how do we keep it fresh and innovative? The design elements, so working with the Faculty of Health Science Library, for example, how do we design and perhaps catalog these stories? And we had some initial conversations, as Dr. Alison Dubé knows, with the Faculty of Health Science Library. They're very enthusiastic about this, but need to circle back. And I have standardized patient program because we actually have a program where we involve actors with health professional training of healthcare professionals, and in this case, it's real people. But we really do need to make sure that the environment is safe, so to speak. We have to be very mindful, telling and retelling your story, what that can involve, and so we're learning lots and look forward to learning lots about how we can ensure the space. This process is feasible and accessible. And then we think about social entrepreneurship. And so with Dr. Audrey Paddocks, I know she has an entrepreneurial spirit in her. And so thinking about how we can take this forward. And is it about training, who's the target audience? Is it the training of healthcare, future healthcare professionals, researchers? I should have lots of question marks on that side, but yeah, we need to think about how do we sustain this. So just in closing, we can say that, and this graphic has been shown many times, right, in terms of what equality is, equity. Now the person can see over the fence on the far right side, but the fence still exists. And that's really, we need to remove the fence. We need to remove, which is about justice, and remove the causes of that inequity. Why in the first place? Sure, they can see the game, but the fence is still there. And so here in Hamilton, I hope you've seen these signs around. I appreciate the sign. This is a picture I took on a walk, obviously, last summer, not in the winter, because there's some greenery there. But it really is intersectional in many ways, and that's the basis of the I Am platform. So I'm very grateful to everybody on the line, and for our ongoing conversation. And I'll close with that.
Thanks so much, Brenda. You get the award, first to ever finish the collaborative conversation before the top of the hour. So maybe if you're okay with this, we can open it up and see if anyone has any questions or want to share their reflections on that.
I spoke really quickly, so I have a lot of insight into what I do when I'm speaking. So I know my pace was likely quick, but no apologies necessarily, but
no, it's recorded and everyone can rewatch it.
Rewatch it
at a slower speed if they want.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Sheila. And I see Rebecca. Go ahead, Sheila.
Okay, I'm wondering what motivated you to start this? What gave the spark, gave you the idea around it?
That's a really good question. So I feel like I can't pinpoint one single thing and you're not surprised to hear that. So it's like a compilation. So there's work that Alison Dubé and I were doing with Mira to try to bring intergenerational connectivity at a time during the pandemic, right, Alison? Oh my goodness, we're shaking, or no, she's going up and down, but I'm shaking my head. Like, how do we bring, how do we bring students and older adults together during a time which was extremely lonely and hard? And so that, you know, we saw, I'm going to say the magic, but Parminder Raina doesn't like me using the word magic because actually he likes the word science. So yeah, what's the science of that interaction and how do we evaluate that? So the research side and the evaluation side is really important. So all of that to say, I talked about those events that we were all witness to. And yeah, so just I can't explain it, but having to put ideas on paper certainly helps too. And that grant that ended up, that I worked with a trainee with, certainly that failed, was something that made me put some of those ideas that were happening up here onto paper. So I'll close with that. It's a great question, Sheila. I need to think of a better answer than that. Sue, I'm going to rely on you to imagine that, to maybe.
Sure, Rebecca, I know you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Mark. We can't hear you, Rebecca. How about we go to Mark and then we'll come back to you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there was any external pressure to get this going. Like, were there any voices that were saying you need to do this, or is it just like an agreement or like a eureka moment where everybody said, yeah, let's do this?
So Mark, yeah, I guess I'm wondering why you're asking that question. I'm more curious now. I'm going to ask a question back.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You were talking about bringing these voices in, but I was just wondering if there was also some external pressure saying bring these voices in. You know, like for instance, I mean, the collaborative is a great idea.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if there was anybody external, like older, even students saying, like, you know, how can we get this done without reinventing the wheel each time an individual person does a research study? Like, you know,
Mark, yeah. Mark, I'm really glad you expand on that because maybe it helped me a little bit think about that. I think there is growing, and can we call it positive pressure? Is that possible to involve? And of course, Mark, we're very grateful to you and others on the line who are part of our collaborative advisory committee. And you joined, right? Not at the initial outset, but have been recruited on board. And all of that to say, right, to have the voice at the table, that is something certainly within my class. My class is in occupational therapy. There's a time where we use, you know, a case that's written, right, to discuss. So what do you call it? Like a paper case. There's a time when we bring in actors as well, so that students can practice skills. And then there's times where we bring in real people with real stories. And I'm going to say the power that happens with that in terms of the learning that can happen. And so this notion of lived experience, certainly, and to our social scientists on the line, they've been doing this for years and years and years and years. And I think in health science, it's been growing. So all of that to say, there is external pressure, but I did not have that external pressure. Now I have pressure to be able to show, Alison's laughing, to be able to show some of the outcomes from this platform because some of the funding that's been provided. But so now the pressure's on a little bit for that. But some of these things, so if it fails, I think we're a society of success, and at least we're trying it out. So I can keep talking, you can see.
Maybe we can try going back to Rebecca if she's got her audio, and then to Tom, and then we'll probably
I'll keep my answers. I'll keep my answers
transition
more succinct.
over. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
I apologize. I had to toggle settings for my daughter's music class last night. So anyhow, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for a really terrific presentation and a really exciting platform that you're developing. I want to especially say, Sheila, thanks so much for being a part of it and sharing your story. It's a really powerful story. And to me, it was so powerful in so many ways about your experiences, but showing you as a whole person, about your experiences, what you're doing today, your health context that doesn't define who you are. And I think that that is like the amazing potential of the platform to really show people like as whole people and the richness of their lives. And so I just want to really thank you for that, because I could see how that would benefit so many, well, all of us and so many learners, especially if they have a very specific orientation to what aging looks like. And so I guess my question about the platform is about whether that's available, like what is the current status of it and how available is it for people? And I know always questions about like that pressure about, okay, is it out there? But just maybe if you can give us a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Rebecca. So I will say right now it's very human heavy in terms of Esther being able to help coordinate those conversations. So we're really in a very, I called it a beta version, but Teresa Chan, who's the head of our faculty development, said we need to try it. It can't be perfect. So it's an imperfect platform and it's an imperfect approach. But the key is that we're trying it out to get that feedback because we actually don't know what happens on the other side of the conversations. We don't know about the content and all these things in terms of investment. We do need another iterations. So it is not available. That was a world premiere. That's what I say. This is the world premiere of the IM platform in some ways to show a little bit more detail and particularly the profile approach. So it's not available, dare I say, yet.
Okay, thanks so much. And I do have a quick question, follow-up question, if it's okay, about, because you really beautifully talked about intersectionality. So how is intersectionality sort of driving like the profiles and the team and the work more broadly?
Yeah, so I think to learn about some of these concepts, it was a new concept to me, Rebecca, and so to be able to bring that forward. So it's within the content, it's within the title, it's within, so it really is foregrounded as well, I'll say. Yeah, it's a complex, it's complex subject matter, right? And so I think the opportunity to explore what it means, like, our identities don't sit in silos. In fact, they stack and they're cumulative. And so these are the things that we have to sort of sort through. So so all of that to say that intersectionality, certainly that notion of aging and intersectionality inclusiveness is definitely I think the secret sauce of this platform.
So we are at 12:59. I want to give the last word to Tom before we make that transition, but I realize if anyone has to drop and click the next button, please, of course, do. Tom, over to you.
Thanks.
I'm hoping there's enough time to answer this question, assuming there's an answer, but I was curious about the obstacles, organizational, institutional, that you had to overcome to do this project.
Oh, Tom, yeah, you're right. It's not all unicorns and rainbows and sunny days. So Esther might be able to speak more to that. Esther, dare I ask you to unmute. Unfortunately, Esther's video is not working, or else she'd be waving with her enthusiastic way about her. And that's what keeps driving. I'm going to say the enthusiasm is the gas, Tom, that keeps this going forward. But Esther, maybe you can speak to some of the challenges.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you again for asking. It's so wonderful to see everyone here today. Some of the challenges, it's hard to say. I think the biggest challenge for me is I'm pretty new to this. I'm still in my undergrad, so I've really learned a lot with Brenda, just learned a lot in terms of logistics, ethics, project management, communicating with people. And even though I've had a lot of experience in the past with interviewing people for, I'm not sure if any of you might be familiar, but with Humans of McMaster, which is modeled after Humans of New York, even though I've had a lot of experience with talking with people I don't know and with people who might have different backgrounds and views than myself, it's the biggest challenge was really just getting through all of those new topics, a lot of new experiences. But like you were saying, Brenda, as well, I think that's also a very potent driver of why I'm very interested in this and why I'm really passionate about this. Because to me, even though I am interested in research itself, this is much more about the process for me and being able to meet with people one-on-one and seeing people in groups coming together, seeing these conversations come to fruition. That is the most exciting part of it for me. So big challenges, but also big wins is what I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like with the help of Esther and Dr. Joyla Vrkljan, that we've been able to sort of create a pipeline, dare I use that word, in some ways, and sort of, but then we were like, oh, oops, that happened. Oops, our older adult weren't able to meet, or that, right, some topics have come up that are really challenging topics raised by either the trainee or the community profile. And how do we navigate those parts of the conversation that we might not expect? And we just need to, we need to think that through. So yeah, some things are coming up that we just, we didn't expect, but we're taking note of them. So then the next iteration can go more smoothly.
Well, now we are at 1:02. I really want to thank Brenda and all of the partners, Tom, Sheila, Stephanie, Dee, Young K, for sharing your experience. I don't know if everyone can see the chat, but there's lots of notes of appreciation for this work. I think, as you said, Brenda, there's so much excitement. Hopefully you have some more fuel for your next steps. And with that, I think we're going to make our transition into our reflecting together. So for those who want to stay, awesome. If you're jumping off to something else, I want to just plug. Allison's going to follow up with lots of details and these resources from Brenda, but our next collaborative conversation is going to be on April 4th. So more